You think you're escaping the world, adrift in the vast ocean. No one to bother you, no phone signal, just the waves, sunlight, and laughter. But you've forgotten one thing. When no one can reach you, that's also when no one can save you. In today's video, you won't just hear ordinary ghost stories. These are 3 true stories that took place on luxurious cruise ships, places that should have been vacation paradises, but instead became stages for dark, chilling, and inexplicable horrors. The first story. A young woman decides to take a trip to Greece, something her late husband had always dreamed of. But aboard the ship, she repeatedly encounters a strange man. Every time he appears, he stares at her with a dead, hollow gaze, until she discovers his face is identical to her husband's, who died in an accident 2 years ago. The second story. A college student enjoys the cruise with friends but loses his phone. Yet, the phone continues to transmit its location from the ship itself. Then come handwritten notes, stolen photos, and knocks at the cabin window in the dead of night. The ship has docked, but the nightmare has only begun. The third story, a beautiful bartender, passionate about life at sea, receives a drink from a mysterious guest. After taking a sip, she blacks out and wakes up tied up in her cabin, her belongings stolen. His name isn't on any passenger record, as if he never existed. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, in the heart of the ocean, where no one can hear your cries, fear is the only thing that never drifts away. Shelby DeLuca didn't believe in omens. She believed in schedules, in work emails, in blue-tagged reminders on her phone. But since Antonio's death, everything she believed in seemed to lose its weight. Her husband's death, a motorcycle accident on a narrow mountain pass north of Florence, was so sudden and senseless that no one knew what to say besides the usual platitudes. At least he didn't suffer. He lived a full life. But the living were no longer whole. 8 years had passed, and Shelby still carried that wound in her heart. She had never traveled alone, never stayed in a hotel room without Antonio's familiar laughter. He had once said he wanted to watch the sunset in Santorini, sip wine in Mykonos, and get lost in the white stone alleys of Athens. And she had said no. Always, maybe next summer, until there were no more summers left. On the 8th anniversary of his death, Shelby woke in the darkness of her apartment in Florence, gazing out the window where morning mist blanketed the terracotta rooftops. She opened her laptop, her hand slightly trembling as she typed into the search bar, "Greek cruise, spring." A week later, she booked a ticket with Celebrity Cruise Line. 6 cities, 7 nights. A journey he had dreamed of, and now she would take it alone. She boarded the ship in Athens, wearing a simple white dress, sunglasses covering half her face. Cheerful couples and chattering groups of friends drifted past her like an entirely different world. Shelby felt like a ghost adrift in someone else's vacation. That first night, as the ship departed port, she drank. A martini, then another. A dull sadness she couldn't quite name. And then she saw him. A man sat alone at the far end of the outdoor bar. Long, dark brown hair, tousled. Not a bad-looking face, but something in his gaze made Shelby's skin prickle. He didn't sip his drink, didn't speak, didn't turn away. He just stared, through the crowd, through the music and flickering lights, straight at her. It wasn't curiosity in his eyes. It was something else. Recognition, as if he knew her already. As if he had been waiting. The next morning, Shelby woke with a dull headache, a hangover laced with fragments of a strange dream. In it, Someone had whispered her name from beneath the ship's deck. The voice repeated again and again, like the soft crashing of waves against wood, but clear, distinct. She brushed it off, blamed the alcohol, the lingering grief. But part of her mind couldn't let go of that stare from the night before, the gaze of the strange man at the bar, as deep as the sea and as cold as stone. The first stop of the cruise was Santorini. Sunlit white steps, the scent of lavender, and the taste of chilled wine seemed enough to help her forget, if only for a while. Shelby dined alone at a seaside cafe, bought a few small souvenirs, then wandered into a tucked-away bar at the end of a narrow street. The martinis kept sliding down her throat, warm, then cold. She thought she was starting to relax, until she saw him. It was him again, the same man. Long brown hair, unshaven jaw, seated beside a lamppost. His eyes never left her. No surprise, no urgency. As if he knew exactly she'd be there. Shelby's heart pounded. She glanced around, looking for any sign of concern, but no one noticed. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, hands in pockets, head slightly tilted, watching. She turned away, walking quickly toward the dock, her palms clammy with cold sweat. When she looked back once more, he was gone. The next day was Ephesus. She tried not to think about the previous night.
It's nothing,
She whispered to herself.
Just a coincidence.
She drank less, took the guided temple tour, didn't see him. No strange glances, no dark figure in the crowd. But in Mykonos, everything began to fracture. Shelby sat alone at a beachside bar as the sunset painted the sky crimson. Laughter echoed from a nearby crowd, and then she felt it before she saw it. A chill in the air, a prickle at her back, the sensation of someone standing just behind her. She turned, and her heart clenched. He was there, a few feet away, leaning against a lamppost. Same dark clothes, the same gaze fixed on her. But something was different. He no longer looked like a stranger. He looked familiar, like someone she had once loved. His eyes resembled Antonio's uncannily. Not exactly, but eerily enough to make Shelby's throat tighten. She hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. Her heart thudded in her chest like an alarm bell. And this time, she didn't return to the ship alone. She struck up a conversation with an elderly couple and asked to walk back with them. That night, Shelby locked her cabin door twice, but she didn't sleep. Her eyes stayed fixed on the gap in the curtain, watching the Black Sea beyond. In her chest, a cold question began to surface. Who was he? And how did he know she would be there? Shelby barely slept the night after Mykonos. Every sound on the ship, the waves, the clang of metal, footsteps in the corridor, seemed louder than usual, almost too vivid. She pulled the curtain aside. The lights on the deck glowed dimly, like underwater shimmer. No one was there, but the feeling of being watched clung to her, refusing to let go. The next city was Volos. She didn't leave the ship. She sat near the gangway, the passenger exit, with a cup of cold coffee and sharp eyes scanning every person disembarking. He didn't appear. She watched for 3 hours until her eyes burned. No one looked like him. No dark coat, no long brown hair, no sunken, haunting eyes. She asked herself, was he even real? The final day. Thessaloniki. This time, Shelby stepped off the ship with resolve. No more fear, no more hiding. She didn't know what she was looking for, an answer or a rational excuse to believe her mind wasn't falling apart. She wandered the cobbled streets, bakeries, souvenir shops, the buzz of scooters and peals of laughter. Everything felt too vivid, too normal. For the first time in days, she relaxed, started to feel light again. And then, like being torn from a dream. She saw him, 3 blocks away, standing in the middle of the street, arms hanging loosely. The breeze fluttered the edge of his coat. Sunlight slanted across his face, blurring it. But Shelby recognized the shape of him, unmistakable. He stood there, unmoving, watching her. But this time, the fear didn't rise. It was replaced by rage. Something ignited inside her, burning hot, and she walked straight toward him.
Hey!
She shouted. Her voice echoed. He flinched, and then he turned and ran. Shelby froze for a second, then gave chase. He veered left. She followed. He darted across the street. She stayed close behind. Every corner swallowed him deeper into a maze. She was gaining. Turned right. She yelled,
Stop!
but when she reached the final bend, he was gone. No alley, no figure. Just a dead-end street with a tall brick wall and a rusted fence. He couldn't have gone anywhere, but he wasn't there. Shelby stood still, breathing hard. She looked around. No footsteps, no trace of that dark coat. Only the pounding of her heart, as if the street itself were holding it. She didn't remember how she made it back to the ship. That night she slept heavily, too exhausted to dream. But as soon as she returned to Florence, she opened her laptop, searched. No name, no clues, only one thought. Who was he? And then she saw him. On a missing persons page, Shelby's eyes were glued to the screen. The photo came into focus. That familiar face, the long brown hair, the distant gaze. His name, Antonio Rossi, the same name as her husband. Her hands trembled as she scrolled down to the description. This man had gone missing after a small boat accident off the coast of Parga, Greece. The body had been recovered. The case was closed just 1 month before her trip. The confirmed date of death, April 29th. The same day Antonio, her husband, had died, but exactly 2 years apart. Shelby sat frozen, as if the entire world had cracked open beneath her feet. She called the police, reported the encounters, the cities, and the times. As she recounted everything, the dispatcher's voice went quiet for a moment, then asked,
"Are you sure?"
Yes.
She whispered.
"The case is closed. That man is dead."
After hanging up, she couldn't remember if she had cried or just trembled. In the days that followed, Shelby tried to make sense of it all. A ghost? A hallucination? A cruel coincidence? But nothing convinced her, because the way he looked at her, every footstep, every street corner, it had all been too real. And there was one more detail. The only city where she hadn't seen him, Ephesus, was the one city, not in Greece. It was in Turkey, a country that Antonio had never wanted to visit. The following July, at her niece's wedding in Athens, Shelby stood at the bar, raising a glass, and then froze. In the mirror behind the bar, she saw him. No one else noticed. No one turned around. Only her. Same clothes. Standing in the distance. Head slightly tilted, watching her. This time Shelby didn't run. She simply walked away from the bar and never returned to Greece again. Devon had always believed that a cruise would be the ultimate healing balm. After a stressful semester, she and her 3 best friends, Taylor, Tao, and Messina, booked a Bahamas cruise as a declaration. 21 years old, free, and unstoppable. The massive Carnival ship glided out of New York on a summer morning, sunlight dancing on the deck like shimmering cuts across the sea's surface. They wore bikinis, drank cocktails out of colorful plastic cups, laughed loudly while snapping selfies, and plastered Snapchat stickers that read Bahamas Vibes, as if life itself was just one big hashtag. But underneath those smiles, something was simmering. Devin and Taylor weren't always on the same wavelength. Taylor was quiet, rarely shared. Devin was the opposite, vibrant, extroverted, attention-seeking. She'd often tease Taylor about being more into fast food than the gym. Everyone usually laughed it off, but Taylor didn't. On the first night at port on Paradise Island, the group was already drunk. They danced in a beachside bar, letting local guys buy them drinks like the world was one endless party. Devin was carrying 2 cocktails, one for herself, one for Messina, returning to their table after snapping a few selfies with her phone left briefly on the bar. But just minutes later, as they left the bar and began the walk back to the ship, a chill crept down her spine. Her phone was gone. A hollow sensation spread through her chest, not just over the lost device, but because that phone held her entire life. Messages, photos, passwords, even contacts with family addresses. She broke down in tears. But the strangest part hadn't happened yet. That came when she opened her laptop and saw that the phone's location wasn't on the island. It was still on the ship. Devin couldn't sleep that night. She lay curled up on the cabin bed, the dim glow from her laptop screen reflecting off the ceiling. The tracking map blinked. A green dot representing her phone, still somewhere on this ship. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and looked around. Everything was silent. No laughter, no hurried footsteps like during the day. Only the steady sound of the ocean lapping against the ship's hull. The next morning, Devin rushed to the lost and found desk, clinging to a fragile hope. But no one had turned in a phone. The staff member replied in a bored tone.
Someone probably found it and decided to keep it.
She left with a gnawing discomfort, not just because of the phone, but because something didn't feel right. That afternoon, she checked the tracking map again. This time, the green dot was right in front of her. She stood at the bow of the ship, the wind whipping through her hair, looking around. About 10 people were nearby. Which one of them had her phone? Who was watching her from behind those sunglasses? Devin went back and told her friends. Messina and Tao gasped. But Taylor, she just smirked. A half smile, fleeting, then gone. Devin saw it immediately. The mockery. A strange, triumphant glint. Suspicion ignited in her mind. She stared at Taylor, then turned away. That evening, they stopped by the arcade at the far end of the ship, a quiet, somewhat run-down place. They laughed at outdated game machines under flickering neon lights. Devin opened her laptop again. The green dot was right beside her. She looked around, then looked at Taylor.
Enough.
She growled. She confronted Taylor, thrusting the screen in her face.
Explain this.
Taylor shrugged, pouted.
I'm not your babysitter. If you're dumb enough to lose your phone, don't blame other people.
Devin's blood boiled. They erupted into a full-blown argument, stopping everyone in the arcade. She demanded Taylor empty her pockets, open her wallet and her backpack, but the phone wasn't there. Taylor smirked.
Happy now?
Devin ran. She didn't want to cry, but the tears came anyway. She returned to her cabin, shut the door tight, and locked it. The laptop stayed open all night. The green dot was still there, and it didn't seem to sleep. It moved slowly, tracking her. This wasn't just about a lost phone anymore. Someone was watching her, and they were very close. For the next 2 days, Devin didn't leave her room unless necessary. She turned down every invitation and avoided Taylor like a nest of snakes. Every morning, she opened her laptop again. The green dot still lingered. Sometimes it was in the dining hall, other times near the pool, then by the spa, as if it was moving with her, not hiding, not sneaking, just watching openly. Devon started jotting down every location it appeared. She still suspected Taylor, but part of her knew that if it were Taylor, it wouldn't have gone on this long. On the final night, when she returned to her cabin, she found a white envelope neatly placed at her door. No sender, no return address. Just a scrawled message in shaky handwriting.
Don't scream.
Her heart clenched tight. She triple-locked the door, trembling as she opened the letter. Inside was a folded sheet of paper, written in blue ballpoint ink, shaky and riddled with spelling errors.
I see you. You're very pretty. You smile a lot. I like the way you drink water. I found your phone. No password. You're interesting. Cute pictures. I think you're special. I want to see you when no one else is around.
No name, just a crooked signature. B. Devon threw the letter down, bolted into the hallway, and pounded on the nearest security office door. She told them everything, from the missing phone, the tracking, to the letter. But the guard just sighed.
Without evidence, we can't verify anything. Might just be a prank.
She screamed.
Someone's watching me.
No one believed her. Back in her room, Devon opened her laptop by instinct. The green dot was gone. But then, hours later, in the middle of the night, as she lay curled up staring at the ceiling, she heard a faint sound, like paper sliding under the door. She shot upright. Another envelope. A photo. It was her at the supermarket on the island, taken from a distance. That night, Devon didn't sleep. The laptop lay on her chest, its screen casting a faint glow. She tracked the location, this time not a green dot, but fear itself. When the ship docked in New York the next morning, she felt no relief, because she knew someone had her data, and they didn't need to be on the ship anymore. They could follow her home. When Devon returned home to New Jersey, it felt like everything was finally over. She changed her number, bought a new phone, and locked all her social media accounts. Her family comforted her. Friends said it was probably
Just some creep. A weird coincidence.
She nodded, but deep down, she knew. Nothing about it was a coincidence. A week passed. False peace. Then, one rainy night, as Devon was watching TV in her room, a thought crossed her mind. Open the laptop. Try the tracker one more time. The green dot. I was inside the house. Devon shot up. Without hesitation, she screamed for her dad. He ran out, barely having time to ask before the dog started barking in the backyard. They both bolted to the back door, rain pouring down like punishment. A figure, tall, thin, long-haired, was climbing over the fence. Her father shouted, firing a warning shot into the air. The figure fell, scrambled up, and disappeared into the darkness. Behind the house, they found a ladder, propped against Devon's window. On the wooden frame, there were knife marks, deep, sharp, just minutes away from slicing through the lock. He had a plan. He was ready. The police arrived. They wrote up a report, but no one caught him. Her phone data? Gone. He had everything: photos, contacts, addresses, habits. Devon didn't sleep that night, and even now, 3 months later, she still isn't sure she's truly safe. She moved house, changed her account names, but every time she gets mail with no return address, every quiet knock in the night, she freezes. Because she knows some people don't need to appear to make you afraid. They just need a name, a photo, and a stolen phone. For Elise, working as a bartender on a cruise ship wasn't just a job, it was a dream. At 25, beautiful, charismatic, and with bartending experience at 3 major bars in Chicago, she was hired by Royal Caribbean without much hesitation. A 12-day journey across the Atlantic, from Miami to Portugal and Spain, felt like the perfect reward for all her hard work. On her first day aboard, Elise felt like she had stepped into another world. Soft music playing, tourists laughing, cocktails swaying under the sun. She loved the feeling of standing behind the bar, joking with guests, listening to snippets of life stories of faraway places. To her, every customer was a piece of a puzzle, and this ship was one big moving picture in the middle of the sea. But there was one piece that didn't fit. The man named Sebastian, or at least that's what he claimed, appeared on the second night. Tall, probably in his 30s, with pale blue eyes like frozen water. He wasn't like the usual drunk tourists. He drank slowly, never got drunk, and every time he sat at the bar, hours would pass in silence. Elise tried to make conversation. Sebastian answered softly, but his eyes never left her. On the fourth night, he started talking about his wife, Sasha, who had betrayed him with his best friend Charles. The stories were disturbingly detailed. Real names, locations, emotions. Elise felt like he wasn't sharing. He was unloading a pain no one had ever heard before. Elise felt sympathy. She didn't realize that her compassion would be the thing that dragged her into a nightmare. When he said,
"You're the reason I didn't jump off the ship last night,"
she just smiled, thinking it was one of those sad, romantic lines. But in his eyes, there was no smile, only something deeper, colder, as if the bottom of the sea had already seen her. Elise had never felt so seen, so exposed. Every night Sebastian sat in the same seat, the third stool from the left, beside the liquor shelf. He wasn't loud, he didn't overdrink, but no one else ever sat near him. The aura around him was like a fog, cold, heavy, and pushing others away. Against her better instincts, Elise felt sympathy. She'd known heartbreak. She'd been abandoned without a word. And Sebastian, with eyes that seemed to hold an entire winter, looked like he, too, was drifting, lost with her on this ship. On the fifth night, just before closing time, he poured her a drink. Elise usually didn't accept drinks from guests, but that night he said,
Think of it as a thank you.
The cocktail had a faint scent of mint, nothing unusual, but after just a few sips, her head began to spin. Everything tilted, not like a drunken daze, but like being pulled out of her own body. Elise tried to stand, but her knees gave out. Darkness closed in before she could call out to anyone. When she opened her eyes, she recognized the ceiling, her cabin, but something was off. Everything was a mess, as if a storm of rage had torn through. Her hands were tied with bed sheets. A rag was stuffed into her mouth. Dizzy and disoriented, she struggled. After several minutes, there was a knock. The cleaning staff had arrived. She was rescued. More than 24 hours had passed. Sebastian had vanished. He didn't return to the ship. He wasn't listed on the passenger manifest at the next port. He had left, taking with him Elise's phone, wallet, jewelry, and all her data. She had no idea how he'd gotten into her room. No one saw him disembark, but security footage showed he left the ship at Ponta Delgada before she even lost consciousness. And he never came back. Royal Caribbean tried to cover it up. They offered compensation, asked Elise to stay silent. All she wanted was an answer. How did he disappear like that? How could someone with a full name and valid passport just leave without a trace? Police found nothing. His listed address, empty, phone number, disconnected, bank account, disabled, as if Sebastian had never existed, just a ghost who boarded with the sea breeze and vanished with the fear he left behind. After leaving the ship, Elise returned to Chicago, her mind still tangled like a knotted rope. Royal Caribbean offered a generous compensation in exchange for silence. She accepted, not for the money, but because she just wanted to bury everything, to erase the name Sebastian from her memory, but he wouldn't let her forget. A month later, an unmarked envelope was slid under the door of her rented apartment. Inside was a photo. Elise, stepping out of a grocery store, taken in secret, from behind, just far enough to see her face. She went pale. A week after that, another envelope. This time, a photo of her sitting in a cafe, head bowed, reading a book. No one else in the photo noticed her, except the one taking it. Him. He was out there. He knew where she lived. Elise went to the police. They listened, filed a report, but did nothing further.
Might just be a sick joke,
one officer said, his tone impatient. She asked about Sebastian, his real name, booking records, and passport. All the information was legitimate. Address, ID number, and former workplace. But the place he had lived was now empty. The landlord said he'd moved out over a month ago, left behind a bare room, no trace, not even a scent. She felt like she was falling in free fall. Then, that night, a knock came on her bedroom window. She lived on the 3rd floor. Elise froze. No one else was home. She stepped slowly toward the window, gently pulled back the curtain. No one was there. But on the glass, a handprint, cold, clear, and taped to the corner of the window, a small crumpled note in shaky handwriting.
You drank the drink I made. You are mine.
Elise grabbed her phone, hands trembling, and called the police. They arrived, swept the area. No one was found. But beneath the window they found footprints, muddy impressions on the railing of the lower floor balcony. Someone had climbed up, quietly, calmly. She moved out that very night, left no forwarding address, cut all social media, bought a new phone. But no matter where she goes, Elise still flinches whenever she receives a handwritten letter, whenever she senses unfamiliar eyes in a crowd, because she knows he's still out there. Not because she was anything special, but because for someone like him, once they choose, they don't need a reason, only an opportunity. 3 months passed. Elise had moved to a small town in Oregon, where no one knew her, where no one asked too many questions. She was no longer a bartender. The dream of living at sea, listening to strange stories behind a bar, was now just a dull scar. She lived quietly, no social media, no registrations under her real name. Worked during the day, came home before dark. But the fear never left her. She bought security cameras, checked the locks 3 times every night before bed, and always kept a folding knife under her pillow. One rainy night, as she was brushing her teeth in the bathroom, she bent down to splash water on her face. She looked up and froze. In the mirror, reflected behind her, was a figure, blurry, indistinct, but standing right in the doorway. Elise spun around. No one. She rushed through the house, checking every room. Doors are still locked. No sound. No sign of forced entry. Maybe it was a hallucination. Maybe her memories still hadn't let her go. But the next morning, when she opened her mailbox, she found a small package, unmarked. Inside was a glass tumbler, the kind used at the Royal Caribbean bar. At the bottom of the glass, written in faint marker, were the words,
I miss your smile. Don't make me have to look again.
Elise collapsed. She understood. There was no escape. Because once you've boarded the same ship as the devil, the ocean is never wide enough to hide. Three stories, 3 ships, 3 fates that seemed unrelated, but all shared one thing: fear hiding beneath the deep blue water, where there's nowhere to run, no one to call, and nothing to hold on to except your instinct to survive. If you've ever dreamed of a vacation at sea, you might want to think twice after watching this video. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. That means you're brave enough to step into the dark and smart enough to take a step back before it swallows you whole. If you enjoy true, chilling, and bizarre stories like these, hit the like button to let us know you want more. Comment below to share your thoughts or a creepy tale you've heard. And don't forget to subscribe, because we'll be back with journeys that are scarier, deeper, and even more real. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss a single story from the shadows ahead. See you again on the next boarding. Let's just hope it won't be your last.